Hi there. Thank you very much for supporting my first Facebook Live broadcast. For those of you who know me or who have seen this, it was a few weeks ago. Actually, I pushed the go live button, and it was supposed to be just a practice run, and turns out it was live. So I started talking and wasn't really sure what I was saying, and I just wanted to thank everybody who actually still supported me and who were still out there. They encouraged me to keep going and go forward with myself. And so thank you very much for that. So today is the first of many live broadcasts that I'm planning to do on various topics. And this month I'm going to be focusing on depression. And specifically for today, I have a specific slant on it that I'd like to tell you about. But if there's any questions that come on while I'm talking, I'll do my best to get to them. I'm still pretty new at this, so I might not quite get there. If I don't get your questions, I'll get them in the comment section. So please feel free to tell me how you're feeling, what's going on for you, and I'd love to connect with you. So first of all, who am I? My name is Robert Grigor. I am a registered clinical counselor working in downtown Vancouver, BC. I have a small private practice, and I deal with all kinds of issues. I think of myself more as an EMDR therapist, and I'll explain a little bit more as to what that means later on as you get to know me. But I work with individuals as well as couples, and I work online as well as in person, so I'm pretty flexible with how I can actually treat people. But the reason why I wanted to do this live broadcast is because today is February 22nd, and of course that means it is Anti-Bullying Day. I think every day should be Anti-Bullying Day. However, today allows us the opportunity to sort of zero in on our focus and know a little bit about what's happening for people that are bullied and just get the word out there. So I'm happy to be a part of that today. As you can see, I'm wearing my pink in support. So I hope that everybody takes as seriously, I think, of an issue as it is. I hope that you resonate with what I'm talking about. So what am I going to talk about today? Today, I'm going to focus on more the victims or the survivors of bullying, and not so much on the bullies themselves. Now, I know that there's a large body of research out there that supports the claim that those who bully, generally speaking, are bullied themselves. So, I mean, there's some compassion and some empathy here for what's going on for that person, and I think that that's a whole nother conversation. At this time, I'd like to just focus on those who are actually being bullied, those who are victims or survivors of bullying. In today's talk, I'm going to focus a little bit on the short-term and some long-term effects of bullying, and there's many, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of them. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience of being bullied, and of course I have been bullied as a child. And I'm going to lead into what are some things that you can do to respond to bullies, both on the schoolyard or in the workforce, and essentially we're going to lead into how you can respond to yourself. Okay, so I'm just going to dive right on in. And so, you know, one of the short-term effects of being bullied is that, you know, there's a sort of a shaking of one's world. If you can imagine being, you know, sort of going along in your day, and then all of a sudden you're being faced with this bullying, whether that be physical, emotional, or verbal, and I think it can do a lot to shake someone's sense of their present moment, their security in that moment. So I think it can be shaking of one's world. When somebody's being bullied, I think that there's a feeling of feeling inferior to this bully. It can lead to emotions such as anger and sadness, and really because if one's the focal point of the bullying, it can really make somebody feel outcasted or outside the group, and so that can really lead to somebody feeling like they don't belong. And of course, belonging is one of the most important things for us social creatures, and I tend to think of humans as human animals because we're part of the kingdom. And if you think about what's going on for people in groups, we're, as human beings, we're actually hardwired to want and to need, quote unquote, to need to belong within groups. In fact, we're physiologically hardwired, if you will, to promote that whatever we can do to stay within the group, because when we were apes back in the jungle, more as we're humans, humans being born without claws, without fur, without really anything to keep us safe in the world, we actually clung to others around us to keep us safe. So one of the worst, at least in my mind, one of the worst punishments for wrongdoing in a group society would actually be to be outcasted, because then the person would be faced with the harsh wilderness conditions on their own, and of course they could become victims to tigers or something like that. So where I'm going with this is just to sort of highlight how biologically and how evolutionarily important it is to feel like one belongs. And so it can be a real shock to somebody's system. And in fact, feeling like one doesn't belong or one isn't part of the group, or it can actually threaten one's way of life, how they think of themselves. They may change the way that they interact at school or in the workforce. Of course, bullying can be literally about personal safety. So, as the bullying may increase, or depending on how it could literally be dangerous. So it's really, really important. Bullying can affect relationships with one's family, with one's friends. It can lead people to be, actually afraid to showing up to attending school or camp or practice or work or whatever social engagement this might be happening. So it could actually make that individual really worried about actually showing up. So they might actually begin to isolate themselves, and that of course makes the feeling alone increase. And generally, because human beings were meaning-making creatures, we might actually make meaning out of this bullying, and it might lead to thoughts about ourselves like we're not good enough, or not wanted, or I'm unacceptable, and those sorts of things. And of course, going from there, one of the effects of bullying and of those thoughts and those isolation can actually be depression. So, and I think that there's a lot to say about long-term and short-term depression. But in a nutshell, the sort of short-term effects could be something like staying in bed extra long, trying maybe to avoid others, or difficulty with sleeping over or undersleeping, over or under eating, maybe a lack of exercise, losing enjoyment in things that normally otherwise would have been enjoyable. And generally speaking, it's sort of about losing or not taking care of oneself, and sort of feeling hopeless and helpless, and in some way, depending on how long this happens, or it can be traumatizing. And when I think about trauma, what I mean by that is anything that's overwhelming to the organism. So of course, some bullying can be traumatic. And the worst thing is if the individual doesn't really feel too comfortable with knowing what to do about being bullied. So if the individual lacks tools to handle the bullying effectively, then there can be dramatic effects. And of course, the worst result of being bullied is silence, keeping it to oneself, and suicide. So I want to throw a little stat out here for you. The Canadian Mental Health Association reports that approximately 24% of deaths between the ages of 15 to 24 will occur due to suicide. It's a staggering number, and I think it might be have increased since the time of this stat. And of course, there's a long-term pattern of depression which can stem from being bullied or from somebody else, but the depression could be triggering it. And the Canadian Mental Health Association as well released another report where approximately 8% of Canadians will experience major depression in their lifetime. Major depression in their lifetime. And I would make a claim here, maybe a bold claim, to suggest that everyone has experienced mild depression and everyone knows somebody who's been depressed. So I think that this connection of bullying and how it leads to depression affects everybody. I really tend to think about depression as oftentimes the silent killer. That, for some people it's very clear that they're depressed and we can sort of see that, but for other people that depression might kind of hide under the surface. So on the surface, you can see that they seem fine, and but under the surface there's a whole chaos of what's happening inside. There could be landmines for that person's self-beliefs. You can think of some of the recent celebrities that have passed away due to depression, and you see everything all over the news. So I want to move on a little bit from there, but the idea for me is that when one is being bullied and when one develops depression as a result of it, there's oftentimes self-beliefs that happen underneath the surface. And that what self-beliefs really are is about what's the story that one tells themselves. Generally speaking, this is a sentence like, I am blank. I am worthless, I am ugly, I am disgusting, I am unacceptable. And so those self-beliefs tend to run pretty much constant under the surface. And hi Tanis, I see you there. Thanks for joining. I think right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift into my story and describe some of the ways that I myself have been bullied. So you get a little sense of me and how that's affected me in my life. So when I grew up, all through my childhood, I was an overweight child. I believe I had a heart of gold, but at the same time I was a bigger kid. And I would constantly be teased in school. I used to be referred to as short, fat, with glasses. And of course, you can imagine how that may have wreaked havoc on my self-esteem. There was actually one time I remember that I was in the front of my school, or my class at school, and I think it was computer class or something like that, and I was standing there and I was about to ask a question, and somebody pulled my pants down, and I'm standing there with no pants on, and I could just feel the embarrassment, the humiliation rise throughout my body, and my face goes beet red, and I quickly pull my pants up, and I'm just I'm shocked. And so, that was just one experience. Of course, everybody laughed, and there was other times when I was, in gym class, trying to be picked for the team, and I've always picked last or pretty close to last, the slowest person in my school year. So all of those things that were happening to me really began to highlight that pain that I was feeling inside of myself. That and it seemed like evidence actually for myself that I wasn't acceptable. I think our minds tend to make meaning out of what's happening to us, and in that moment, or in those moments, I was really. It seemed like it was evidence for me that other kids didn't like me. I wasn't part of the group, and really it seemed like it was evidence that I was worthless, because if I had worth, they wouldn't treat me this way. So, of course, and then from there, having those beliefs about myself, the results tend to be this sort of underlying self-belief for myself, that I was worthless, that I was not valuable, that I was ugly. Because of my weight, I felt that I was ugly. And so I would take these beliefs with me throughout my life. And there's a few other things involved there, but one of the things that happened for me is I began to try and overcompensate when I was in my undergraduate. Hi, Lima. When I was in my undergraduate degree, I wanted to be the cool kid, because of course I wasn't the cool kid in my high school days. I tended to do some things that I thought would be really cool, like I was sort of the party master at my undergraduate. Every Saturday night there was a party at my place. I would give people money to hang out with me. I would buy people drinks, and of course it led into substance abuse, not just alcohol, but marijuana and other drugs. And so I tended to be, to kind of go through this process of doing anything I possibly could just to fit in. And so that pattern of trying to do anything I could to fit in, actually harming myself in the process, was with some deep roots there that kind of held me back in some other areas of my life. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you, because it's such an important broad spectrum situation. So what do you do? What do you do if you're being bullied? One of the things that is really important. Of course, there's tons of different ways of handling this, but one of the ways that the first thing I think that's important is to begin to know one's worth, to know your worth. Know that you don't deserve to be bullied. This isn't how you're, what a polite way of being treated. So I think it's important to know your rights and know that worth. So you have the right as a human being to protest unfair treatment. You have the right not to respond. You have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. And you have the right not to be harassed. So, and there's a whole other list of rights that we have within us that we just innately should be there. So keep that in mind. And then one of the other things that's important is to think about, why is this behavior happening for the bully? And I think that one of the ways to sort of take the sting out of bullying, of being bullied, is to know what might be happening for that bully. Such as, like I mentioned earlier, there might be bullying at home, or there might be an underlying mental health condition for the bully. The bully might be feeling inadequate or inferior, or in some way, shape, or form that you're kind of superior, or you might have access to whatever resources are available in the situation. So they might be threatened by you, and that's why they're bullying you. So that doesn't excuse the behavior, of course, but really if you kind of know, okay, so maybe this isn't just about me, it's about, that this other person that's bullying me is having some issues themselves, and that might help to sort of regain a footing in the moment, feel a little bit more grounded at that time. Um, One, I think the most important thing about this is to um, make sure that you're not escalating the situation. So what I mean by that is do your best not to respond in a high tone with your voice. Um, it's almost like mirroring the opposite of what's happening. So if the bully is yelling at you on a high note, try to take your voice and get really soft, just like I'm doing right now, and say, hey, this isn't okay with me, right? The way that I'm being spoken to, I don't really feel like I deserve that, which of course is leading into another point is identifying the problem behavior right away, and which is essentially calling the person out, whether that be a peer in school, or if that be a teacher, or if that is a coworker, if that's a supervisor or your boss, or your parent or your spouse. It doesn't matter who it is. You have the right to say, look, I notice what's happening right here. I feel like I'm being bullied by you. Can you please lower your voice? Can we speak later when it's more appropriate? Or I'm just not gonna. I don't respond to bullies. And so, if you can, another thing I suggest is if you can in the situation, walk away. You don't need to stand there and take it. You can certainly just walk away. If it's a scenario where you cannot walk away, like it's at work and it's probably maybe best for you if you don't quit your job, or if it's a family member and you want the relationship to continue, one of the things that you can do is, if speaking to them directly doesn't work for you, you can speak to a supervisor if it's at work. Speak to other coworkers about the behavior. Speak with a family member of yours, if somebody who's safe, somebody who's a calm adult. If it's your parent, if you're young or old or anywhere in between, and you can speak with them, then by all means go for it. It can just help to process what's happening for you outside of yourself. Which leads me to suggest that one of the worst things that you can do is to suffer in silence. So if you could share it with the worst person, it's better than keeping it to yourself. But by all means, make sure that you have somebody that you can connect with, that you can talk about what's happening for you and how you're feeling, and somebody who you feel is a safe person. You can get help with by your current friends that you have, or your coworkers or your peer group, and just say, hey, like, there's something that's happening to me and I really need to somebody else's perspective. Can you please can we talk about this? And you might get some great suggestions that you just never thought of, because of course, more people is better than just yourself. Hey, Carly. So another thing that can be totally doable is maybe that friend group that you're with is just not right for you. Maybe you need a new friends group. So it could actually be an opportunity for you to make new friends and reach out to those people and say, hey, this is happening for me. And, I bet that there's probably almost nobody on this planet who hasn't been bullied before. So by you being vulnerable with somebody else and saying, hey, this is happening for me and it really sucks, it hurts, you give somebody else the opportunity at the time to respond to you. It also gives them permission to be vulnerable themselves. They might really resonate with your story and say, hey, well, I was bullied too, maybe by the same person. And you can create a support system out of that. Of course, there's groups that you can go to for support. And if you're having trouble finding some of those groups, feel free to email me and we can talk. That's info@grigorcounselling.com. That's with 2 L's. In any case, if that's really difficult for you as well, I recommend finding a counselor. It doesn't have to be with me, of course. It could be with anybody that you resonate with. And like I said a little bit earlier, just sharing what's happening for you helps you to externalize what's happening, what's going on in your life, give you new perspectives, maybe even give you some tools that you weren't aware of or that you didn't have before. So I highly recommend wherever you are on the spectrum of being bullied, whether you're currently in it right now or you know that you've been a victim and you're a survivor of bullying, wherever you're at in your life, it can be extremely helpful. I think that's really important for me because until one actually deals with that depression or deals with the effects of bullying, they're going to end up taking that with them throughout their lives. Just like I spent years and years with drugs and alcohol and in social groups that really weren't for my benefit. They were quite destructive for me. And instead of carrying those self-beliefs about you into any future event, like for example, not going for that promotion that you think you would really like, it'd be really great for you and your family, or but there's an underlying belief maybe of, you know what, I'm just not worth it. I'm going to get laughed at. I'm going to get rejected by my boss. And maybe I might even get fired because I asked for something else. So those negative beliefs right there would really hold you back from actually thinking that, you know what, I'm worth this promotion. I'm worth this. There could be the possibility of, you know, being afraid to ask that girl or boy out, or to go up to somebody in a social setting and ask to spend more time with them. If you don't feel that you're worth it, if you don't feel that that you're attractive enough, or if you're fearing the results of rejection, i.e. which could stem from those bullying experiences, you're really going to limit yourself as to what you're capable of and what's possible for you. And kind of in that same vein, I think that trying new things in life is kind of what keeps life exciting, and what keeps us, you know, motivated. At least it keeps me motivated to kind of grow and expand and be more. And if there's an underlying fear of, oh, holy crap, you know, I don't think I can do this, or I think that I'm going to be rejected, or I'm going to fail, like I'm a failure, then it's probably likely that you're going to end up not doing those things. So you can really miss out on some excitement in life. Like for example, I'll give you a quick short story. My partner and I were in Mexico, and we were walking up this huge walkway in a cenote, which is a sinkhole basically in the ground, and there's, you know, water that fills up all the way, or not all the way, but in about 30 feet or so from the top of the pier, and then there's, you know, 100 and so feet underneath, and we both thought, oh, that looks really cool. We should totally jump off that thing. And then as we got up to the top of the ladder, or the walkway up there, we both you know, could feel the fear settling in ourselves, because we're both afraid of heights. And so we looked down, and I think that if I hadn't really tackled those inner beliefs of myself through years and years of counseling myself, and I let that consume me, we would never have jumped. And then we wouldn't have a great story to tell. And it's so I really encourage you to do your best, and that's all you can ask for, right? Do your best. If you can get some help for those beliefs that about yourself coming from being bullied, or even before that, I recommend doing it. Otherwise, you might not jump. Um, I think that one of the greatest effects of depression, at least in this society, um, and it might be different for well, I won't even say that. No, I think that one of the effects of this society is the likelihood that those who are bullied seek emotional security through drugs and alcohol. It might even be through food or other problem behaviors like gambling or shopping addictions and stuff like that. And it could lead to obesity, it could lead to just horrible dysfunction in relationships. So it's really quite a serious issue. And I hope that, with help, you can change your life to be about vibrancy and about freedom and just health. Another thing that tends to happen is, as I mentioned before, of one of the effects of bullying is sort of isolating and pulling back from life. That can really mean that you end up missing out on meeting new people or being in social settings which could help you advance in your life and your career, or meeting new relationships, and that's a huge loss. So I think that's one of the ways that if those experiences, those traumatic experiences from being bullied, are healed, then you're much more likely to feel confident enough with yourself to engage in life with more. So that's really a way of reaching your full potential. I don't want to spend too much longer here on this broadcast, but I did want to just point something out. This talk has been about bullying, has been about depression, and the links there. There's of course lots of other reasons why people can become depressed. But I want to encourage you just to check out a free webinar that I'm running on March 14th and March 15th. It's just a few weeks away. You can see the link right here on my board, and if it doesn't come across clearly, that link is webinar. So www.webinar.grigorcounselling, that's with 2 L's, .com/be depression free. Okay, and in this webinar, I'm going to talk a lot about what is the underlying reason for your depression. Where are those roots of the depression coming from? And I'm going to talk about how a type of therapy called EMDR can actually be one of the ways, if not, in my opinion, the best way, your best option to be depression free in 3 months or less. So I really want to encourage you, if you're serious about being depression free, please check that out. Email me. You can go onto my Facebook page, and you can sign up there. You can ask me questions. You can interact with me. Of course, you can interact with me in other venues as well, like on Facebook. It's just Grigor Counseling. Go check out my page. Like it if it resonates with you. And you can check me out on Twitter as well, and I'm info Grigor there. So please send me a link, send me a hey. And if this little mini live broadcast here resonated with you, please feel free to share this with somebody else that could use it, or that might be able to benefit from having some more information, or checking out my free webinar that's going to give you valuable tools for how to become depression free in 3 months or less. So thank you very much, and until next time, ciao for now.